WOD Pod. Join me as I sit down with CrossFitters, fitness experts, top coaches, professional athletes, and other well-known gym goers to listen to their journey through fitness. After seeing Zara's success in Cologne with a Hyrox time of 1 hour 2 minutes, which secured her a place in the Hyrox World Championships, I was keen to find out more about her Hyrox journey. For those of you who are considering doing your first ever Hyrox, looking at getting a Hyrox coach, or just want to know more about Zara's journey, this episode covers it all. Since recording this episode, Zara won the Hyrox Mixed Relay World Championships representing Team England. How epic is that? Enjoy this one.
Zara, thank you for jumping on the podcast, or should I say burpee broad jumping onto the podcast. That's terrible. We're down at Equilibrium Gym in Stamford. Is this your hometown?
Yes, it is my hometown, yeah.
Can you give me a fact about Stamford?
Oh, I've lived here 1 year, so I don't know any facts.
That is a fact. You've lived here 1 year, that'll do. Where did you live, growing up?
So I'm originally from Lincoln, which is only about 45 minutes east of here. But my husband is originally from Peterborough. So actually when we got together, we thought we wanted somewhere nice to live that was kind of between the two.
Yep.
And in Peterborough, there's probably only really the passport office that's really exciting. So we kind of agreed that this town would be a perfect setup.
Peterborough's also got Ragnarok, which is Battle for Mid-Round comp. That's probably all I know it for. So throw that one in. Let's have a rewind. Let's go back to your early days of fitness. What did you do career-wise in terms of fitness, sport, things like that?
So when I was growing up, I literally was a girl that tried everything. At school, I loved football, netball, anything that would keep me active. I kind of grew up within a competitive household almost. So my mum played netball from a young age. And I used to go and watch her growing up, kind of on the sidelines. My dad was a rugby player, then turned coach. But I think from a young age, I always had this really innate and sort of ability and desire to do well in something that I put my mind to. So I remember, for example, my mum used to put me in this swimming club when I was younger, and I think it was my second or third lesson, and the teacher said, right, who can swim without their armbands? And I put my hand up and I couldn't swim without my armbands. My mum was watching over and she was like, what is the lady doing? She's taking off her armbands here. But since then, it's kind of I've had this mentality that, excuse the pun around swimming, but you sink or swim. So I've always been quite competitive and wanted to do well in all the sports that I've been involved in. But growing up through primary school, just did all sorts of sport. I guess running was always a byproduct of that. So kind of had that as a strength growing up. And then hit a bit of a crossroad in terms of I had to choose between football or netball, and I chose netball, and then sort of chose a university that allowed me to go and play for 3 years at Leeds Beckett.
Why did you choose netball?
Probably because I was slightly better at it, I guess. I think in terms of even just the setup and the sort of training and things, I much preferred it, interval training and stuff, and football, body type wise, sometimes I didn't really feel that I was the strongest on the pitch and would often get pushed around by the bigger girls.
Yeah, so it wasn't the stigma of football, because when I was in school I was doing gymnastics and rugby, and if I look back on it, and if I was honest, I picked rugby because it was cooler. Gymnastics obviously had the stigma of, it wasn't what everyone else was doing. So that's probably why I picked rugby. So I didn't know whether that was, when you said football and netball, I imagine most of the girls, or the cool girls, did netball.
Yeah, do you know what? You're absolutely right. And I suppose there was, even growing up, this stigma around football. And I think actually over the past few years, it's been awesome. It's got so much more exposure, hasn't it? Yeah, unbelievable. So potentially it was maybe even without thinking that. But I've always been, even at school, I was on the cricket team. At kind of lunchtime, I'd go and play football with the boys and stuff. So maybe as I got a little bit older, that was something that I thought about subconsciously, but it wasn't really part of, I guess, of that decision.
Yeah, I had to do some full stalker mode.
Oh no.
So I saw that you used to do cross country.
Yes, I did.
I imagine you're pretty good if you were running as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was one of those girls at school. Some of my friends would pretend to get their PE kit every single year when we had to do it. But I loved it. I was out there warming up, half an hour before everybody else. And again, I guess this was just born from my competitive nature. Loved the idea of kind of getting out of maths or English and going to do cross country, running around a field for an hour, and was always quite good. So got to the national stages where I used to go and run around Lincoln Common on a Baltic day. But yeah, again, I've just always loved running from, I guess, a mental outlet as well.
We'll come on to your coaching, but what have you done career-wise since leaving school?
So since leaving school, I went to university at Leeds Beckett and studied advertising and marketing. Like I touched on earlier, didn't really know what I wanted to do growing up. I kind of just knew that I loved working with people, kind of always had this creative spark, so that lent itself more to the advertising and marketing world. After I graduated uni, I fell into a bit of a crazy sales job working for an IT managed service company, but soon found out actually that wasn't really for me, and then did the thing where I packed my bags and went travelling for just over a year. So I did the typical kind of like Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia route, which was awesome. And then after that, I've obviously always had such a passion for fitness and health. So did my PC course whilst working for the Co-op head office in like a people change manager role. And then took the leap kind of a few years ago to jump into online coaching and, become a trainer. I felt that I wanted to, sort of follow my dreams and follow my passion, and it was the right time, especially with my kind of athletic career sort of kicking off around that time too.
Yeah. You mentioned netball. Talk to me about your netball experience in school. Did you play clubs? You mentioned university, I think, off camera.
Yeah.
What sort of level did you get to? So
I got to about a national level at netball. Played throughout school. We had a really good schools team, so we used to go to kind of like the county tournaments, etc. And then I played for my local home city, so I went for Lincoln Ladies, and then again just played in kind of general fun leagues growing up as well. And then at university, Leeds Beckett and Leeds is renowned for having a lot of amazing athletes kind of go to universities and join a team. So I think I got on the highest team that I got to was seconds in uni. I think there was about 4 or 5 teams altogether. But our first team had a lot of elite athletes and Super League players. So actually what was quite cool is I had a lot of exposure growing up to people that were at the top of their game from a fairly young age. So I sort of could learn from them from a training, nutrition, recovery perspective too.
What sort of skills and attributes do you think is required in netball?
Look, coordination, agility. There's a lot of kind of fast pace, quick movement, etc.
What position did you play?
I played a mixture. So I played centre because I just loved running, loved being all over the court.
Yep.
And then because I was relatively tall, I then moved back to goal defence and wing defence, which are good because they're more hunting positions and defending positions. And I think probably what I was able to take from football is the physicality of it. Obviously, even though netball is a non-contact sport, I was still able to sort of hold my own with the odd elbow or two in netball.
Which shouldn't be allowed, but it does happen, doesn't it? I thought, are you going to say goal attack or goal shooter? Because I was thinking that was just teeing up for the wall balls.
Very true. I would have loved to have been a goal attack and goal shooter to get all the glory goals, but my aim wasn't that good, believe it or not.
We'll come on to Hyrox then, because I feel like there are a lot of people waiting for the Hyrox questions. When did you first ever hear about Hyrox? How did you discover it?
So I actually discovered it from a friend back in November 2022. I'd seen kind of it grow over the past couple of years just on social media, but hadn't ever done a race. And one of my friends said, look, there's this race, it's got quite a lot of running in, it's got some strength stuff. And prior to that, I'd done a little bit of CrossFit. I've kind of really enjoyed going to the gym and doing strength training. And he was like, I think it's a blend that's perfect for you. So I did my first doubles back in London in the Excel, which is an unreal venue, back in November 2022, and we did really well. I think we did like a 106 and came top 10.
So before that comp, had you done training for Hyrox, or did you just do Hyrox as we'll give it a go and see what happens?
Yeah, it was more of an experience. So I probably had about maybe 4 weeks to prepare for this event. So tried to touch the sleds and things that potentially I hadn't touched before, because prior to that I did a bit of CrossFit, but used to cherry pick the workouts that had box jumps, wall balls, running in. So yeah, didn't have too long to prepare, but I actually think sometimes, even with all aspects of life, when you don't go in, you don't put too much pressure on yourself, and you don't know too much about the competition or the event, you sometimes perform a lot better. So I think it actually played to my favour. Do
you think it also helped that you did quite a lot of running? You also trained CrossFit, so you kind of had a lot of the fundamentals already there.
Yeah.
You came third, didn't you, in that?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah,
and that was overall?
Overall, yeah. That was age group, sorry, we came third, yeah.
Third.
But yeah, 100%, there was so much that translated from my current training, especially having that really good strength foundation that made the sleds and things easier. But technique played a massive part. I mean, if you'd have seen me in the sled pull in that race, I was slipping all over, falling, and it was a bit of a shambles, but I guess you learn, don't you?
So from finishing that, did you instantly decide, that's it, I'm going to start taking it seriously? Or did you, what was your thought process from finishing that first one?
So my thought process was probably born from my partner turning around to me and saying, you're too competitive for me. I was screaming at him in that race. I think about the 4th run, he was like, my calf's stiffening up, and I was like, this is no time, we've got to keep going. So, but during the race and the atmosphere and stuff and doing the movements, I was like, this is totally aligned to my strengths. And I then kind of booked my first solo open race, which was in Bilbao a couple of months after that. But also I really enjoyed the training. I think coming from a really varied sporting background, I've loved that hybrid approach to training, be it running in the morning, lifting in the evening, etc. And Hyrox allowed me to kind of use all of those skills.
You did London in, was it May 23?
Yes, that's right, yeah.
Was that the first time that you won?
Yes, that was the first time that I'd won an event. So my first open race in Bilbao, I came second overall, but first in my age group and qualified for the World Champs.
Okay.
So within Hyrox, I went and did the open division where the weights are slightly less. But when you qualify for World Championships, everyone has to do pro weights.
Yep.
So therefore, I thought, right, I'll go and have a feel and test it out. So that's when I did London Olympia in the May. And again, massively surprised myself, ended up winning overall. There were some unbelievable athletes that I'd followed on Instagram as well prior to that race. But
do you get prize money for winning?
No, you don't. I actually got my first Built for Athletes bag, and I got a flag. No prize money for that one.
So that was a pro one as well?
Yeah, it was a pro one.
But you do get prize money for some. I've seen...
Yeah, so in the way Hyrox is set up, there are majors throughout the season where the top 15 women and men in the world go to compete, and it's at those races that you can win prize money. Yep. There also are some races, for example, Dubai, Doha coming up, where more areas that are hosting their first race will offer prize money, but it's not kind of across the board.
Okay. The Valencia Hyrox, which was October 23, I think you came second.
I did.
What stands out, or what memories have you got from that Hyrox?
That was a really tough race for me, actually. In terms of, firstly, altitude over in Valencia was a lot different than I was used to. And I found that my running really suffered. And fueling and nutrition is something that I've had to continually learn about myself, what sits well on my stomach and how to prepare for races. And I remember not fueling correctly the day before in terms of hydration, just not getting enough carbs on board. I was really worried about how heavy I'd feel going into the race, which is crazy as an online coach and looking back at it now, because I have this conversation with clients all the time. But the one thing that stands out in Valencia is I was expected to do well in that race from my previous races. And I believe I was probably about 5th or 6th all the way through. and then came into the wall balls maybe fourth. But wall balls actually has only become probably a recent stronger station of mine, and I managed to, you know, pass a few people and actually come second overall. So the resilience side, and, you know, staying in the race and not writing it off from the early stages was probably the highlight of that race.
How do you break up wall balls? Do you rest?
I do rest. So I think the key thing for wall balls is you want to try and do a really big set to start with, so you feel that you haven't got a really big mountain to climb. In Cologne, which was my last race on Sunday, I didn't drop the ball, but I did stand there for a couple of seconds to compose myself. And one thing I'm bad at doing, and people that might have done either wall balls in competition or Hyrox might do this, but you have a judge with a clicker who obviously tells you how many you're on. And because I didn't speak German, and I like mentally to know so I can count myself down, I kept turning round and perhaps did it 3 times to see what I was on. But also in the back of my head, I was thinking, if I turn around, I've got 2-3 seconds rest here, that I can just pretend that I'm looking at the clicker when really I'm knackered.
But you're still doing that with the wall ball. You're not putting it down. So
no.
I think that's where a lot of time will be lost, is once it goes down, it's a mental battle to pick it up again.
Yeah, 100%.
And that's where people can lose 5-10 seconds, you know, kind of the delaying picking it up. If you've got it in your hands, you just think, well, I'm already committed. I've still got it here.
Massively.
So when you did the set of 100, you said you had 3 breaks.
Yeah.
So what would you advise someone that's more of a beginner when they come onto the wall balls?
In all honesty, I think the wall balls is one of the most important stations in Hyrox. So actually in your training, I think it's really important that you're doing wall balls, but things like thrusters, shoulder press, you know, actually building some upper body strength and endurance. But in terms of how I would split the station, I would try to do as big a set as possible, but stop before you reach that sort of full fatigue point. So in all honesty, if you can do anything from 20 to 30 in your first set, and then try to continue even 15s or 20s, taking small breaths to kind of compose yourself, I would do that. If you think about the 100 in the open, ideally 5 lots of 20 is a sort of way you want to be going.
Yeah. Did you get any no reps?
Yes, I think I got about 4, because they're really strict on, there are 2 targets. Obviously the male target is slightly higher than the female. You have to hit the center of the target every rep. So I think in Cologne, I was hitting more towards the bottom of the target. And then obviously very similar to CrossFit, in terms of the depth, you have to reach below parallel.
Yeah. Can you go above the target? Can you go for the male standard? So you have to get it in between.
Yeah. So in fact, it's crazy, isn't it? So you still get a no rep if you hit the higher target, when actually as a female, it's deemed probably harder because you're obviously having to throw it higher. And
do you think Hyrox gets easier the more you do it?
Oh, no.
No.
I don't think...
That's not what people want to hear.
Sorry. Let me rephrase that.
Okay.
I don't think it gets easier. I think you can sit with the feeling of it being uncomfortable, which is easier. And like anything, you obviously get to experience the stations, so you know what to expect. So it's knowing the feelings and how to deal with them. But I wouldn't say it gets easier.
No. And actually, I think CrossFit athletes already know that feeling, because the CrossFit workouts are pretty horrific. Anyone that does CrossFit that goes into Hyrox already knows when they go to that dark place of feeling horrific, they're probably familiar with it. I think runners will get the biggest shock, because they probably aren't used to redlining and the heart rate going through the roof. They're used to steady runs. So I think, if you're a runner and you're contemplating Hyrox, be prepared. Yeah,
of course. And I think something that I taught to a lot of my clients that are maybe looking to do their first Hyrox is it's compromised running as well. So whilst you can look at the race and go, 8K, I could do that on a Sunday, it's quite easy. But actually the feeling of running after a station, when you've got the buildup of lactic acid and you can sort of feel the fire in your legs, that's probably something that needs to be practiced. And that's not me saying you need to go and do hundreds of Hyrox simulations, because that also isn't a good way to train when there's so much to focus on. But actually, understanding how running feels, particularly after the sleds or things like burpee broad jumps, is really key going into your first race.
Can you explain how the Elite 15 works? because I'm quite naive and not quite sure, so I thought there's no better person to ask than someone in it.
Yeah, of course. So the Elite 15 is essentially, it brings together the top 15 women and top 15 men in the world to race. So it's been a slightly different year this year, whereby there have been 4 majors. So they've been in places like Chicago, Stockholm, Vienna and Washington. And to qualify in a major, you have to get a kind of time that puts you within the top 15 in the world. So you can take a time from any race, essentially. For me, I managed to get a roll down spot, so I wasn't officially in the Elite 15. Obviously, athletes from previous years had stopped doing Hyrox, therefore I got the opportunity to do it. And then so if you come between first and fifth in a major, there are 3 spots essentially to qualify for the World Championships in Nice. However, if you don't, there are 2 last chance qualifier races. So one was recently in Cologne on Sunday and the other is in Anaheim in 3 weeks. There was 3 spots in Cologne and there's 4 spots in Anaheim. So essentially you have to podium to then get the opportunity to start on the Elite 15 in Nice.
Once you're in the Elite 15, how long are you in that for?
Cool, it could change.
As in, does it reset every year?
Yes,
okay.
It does reset every year. So there are, if you were to come first, second or third, I believe, in the World Championships in Nice, then actually you get an automatic qualification to next year's majors. But otherwise, you are literally fighting for a spot with your time in that season.
When does the Hyrox season end?
So the World Championships, which is in June, and then the season will then kick off again in around September, October time.
Okay, so in September you won't be part of the Elite 15 until you requalify.
So there'll be times that are taken over from this season will kind of form the top 15.
Okay, fine. So technically you will be part of it,
yes,
unless someone else gets a quicker time. Right.
Precisely, yeah.
Okay. You recently broke the 30 to 39 age group world record in doubles.
Yeah.
That was in Glasgow. Can you describe the feeling when you both crossed the finish line?
Oh gosh, elation. It was so nice as well because I did it with a really good friend that actually I raced my first pro race against her. So to come together and do doubles was amazing. But actually there's a big difference between doing a Hyrox singles and doing a Hyrox doubles. Obviously in doubles it's very interval, short, sharp work where you are having a rest, but essentially you still do have to do the runs together. So, you need to probably find someone that
is a similar standard.
Exactly, a similar standard to you. But when you come to solo, obviously it's more about kind of managing your heart rate. But it was my first competitive doubles, I would say, obviously since the first race that I did in London 2022. And I mean, Kate pushed me massively, and it was great to, obviously, like I said, be kind of on par with someone across the stations. But it was amazing. Glasgow was a great venue. It was absolutely packed out. And they've, in a few Hyrox races, they've created this thing called the Thunderdome, which is essentially where you do your wall balls. But it's really cool for spectators that can kind of like look over and scream and stuff. So yeah, the atmosphere after doing those 100 was awesome.
Okay, 2 questions on that. One, do you think doing doubles is easier or harder than solo?
God, that is a good question. I still think it's harder doing solo because, you haven't got anyone, firstly, to share the load with, second, to sort of motivate you. And you can get in your own head in solo. Like, you have to be sort of switched on and, mentally prepared, I guess. But doubles, it's a lot of redlining. You have to be able to work, to like VO2 maxes and stuff. You're really testing them. So they are very different races.
Okay, and if you were a beginner and you've never done either, what would you advise someone to do?
I would definitely do doubles. I think going into your first Hyrox race, it's awesome because you can experience the stations, you can experience kind of the atmosphere, and you get so much data in terms of all your splits. And again, it's just nice to do it with someone rather than kind of going in and feeling quite daunting because it's such a big task at hand. So even relay as well, they obviously have that division in Hyrox where you can jump in with 3 other people and pick a couple of stations that you'd like to do. So it's accessible, and I think then at least you can get your data from the doubles. have a look at maybe areas whereby you need to focus on if you were to do a singles, and then create your training blocks from there.
I was sort of asking that question for myself, really. So now I know. What sort of role does mental strength have on Hyrox?
Massive. It's huge. Like, it's such a test of both physical and mental strength. So I think you can have all the physical strength, in the world and that you need to going into a race, but if you're not able to apply yourself from like a psychological like mental basis, you can really struggle. And that's something that I have been kind of battling with for a long time, and I said this quite openly on my social media, but Sunday, the race in Cologne, the last chance qualifier, was probably one of the races whereby I wholeheartedly backed myself completely, and I went into that race almost manifesting and believing that I was already going to win. And little tricks that people might say are crazy, or it's maybe a little bit of arrogance, but being in Germany, I took one of my old one flags away with me, and I hung it up in my hotel room so that every single day or hour I would see that number one. And I'm not saying that was the reason that I went and won the race, but I'm saying actually little things that can give you the confidence and the belief that you can go and attack something.
Was that the first time you 100% believed you were going to win?
I would say so, yes, which is a bit crazy, but I've been part of lots of the majors this season, and it's probably my first year where I've really competitively applied myself as a Hyrox athlete. But I've been against the top women in the world that have been in the sport for many years, so it's always been a little bit unrealistic to think I would go and win when the time difference between us is quite large. But actually, the more training that I do, and the more confidence that I build from these races, that gap is getting smaller. So I guess, it was the first time that I completely believed and backed myself.
How soon after you won, or how soon after your first Hyrox did you get a coach?
It would have been probably about 3 months. So I actually started with more like a strength and conditioning coach who hadn't any experience in Hyrox, so sort of focused more on my strength, I guess. So did a lot of like compound lifts, top end stuff, but then moved away from him probably as I got into maybe my second or third race, because sometimes I feel that it's really good to have a coach, especially in Hyrox, and you'll probably agree in the CrossFit space, to have someone that has more knowledge about the race and sort of feeling. But I kind of got all I could from that coach.
Was that online or was that in person?
Online.
Okay, and do you think there's any benefit to in-person coaching over online?
Yeah, of course. I mean, what you get from obviously in-person coaching is you get to build probably maybe a better initial relationship potentially, and if you're doing movements, etc., they can obviously see and give you instant feedback. But actually something that for all of my online clients, it's great that we have amazing technology such as videos. For all of my check-ins, it's really important I'm able to kind of bring up their lifts and stuff and talk over them. So actually probably the barriers to online coaching, I think, are slowly getting that smaller compared to face-to-face.
So as an Elite 15 athlete, how much mileage do you do per week?
Cool. So I've just got not just. In January, I started with 2 new coaches. So kind of my volume of running and everything is like 8-fold. So roughly in terms of kilometres, probably doing around 60 to 65k a week.
What's the split on strength training or other work?
Yeah, so for me, I have kind of 2 pure like strength training sessions, which are broadly split into upper and lower. And then across the running side of things, I do a lot of steady state kind of zone 2 work, which is where I get a lot of my mileage from. I think sometimes that's overlooked because it's really the boring stuff. I would have one interval-based session, which is all around kind of building top-end speed, working on that race pace, etc. And then kind of the fillers are more the engine type style works, which I guess you do, a lot of in CrossFit, say the AMRAPs, the EMOMs, etc.
My physio, Christy, is adamant. So she actually did her first Hyrox and she didn't do any running at all. All she does is CrossFit style training. She actually came third in her age group, which was, I don't know whether she's a bit jammy with her natural ability, but she was like, Tom, if you do a Hyrox, you'll be fine. You won't need to do any running. So my question is, do you think you need to do running before Hyrox?
Yes, I do. I mean, if you are obviously a beginner, I think you still need a good level and good foundation of being able to run. But if you actually want to really go and get a good time and compete in Hyrox, running is one of the most important things. And there's such a broad kind of spectrum and stimulus that you need to work on, be it from your steady state stuff, so zone 2, working 60-70% of your heart rate, then all the way through to kind of interval base and top end speed stuff. All of that is super important. And the compromise aspect, which we touched on earlier, the ability to be able to kind of recover. So my advice, personal advice, I mean, amazing that she obviously did so well, is definitely get some running under your belt before you go and do a Hyrox.
Talk me through the morning of a Hyrox. What do you eat? What fuel do you take?
So I've been quite lucky because a lot of my races have been in the morning, which is when I prefer to work out anyway. For me, obviously, the morning of 3 to 3.5 hours before, that's the most important meal of the day. I love oats. Like, I'm a creature of habit. I have the same breakfast every single day. So I'll have something like oats, banana, some honey, some slow releasing carbs, some orange juice as well for some extra carbs, and then maybe about 40 minutes before, I always have a gel. Now, something that I am playing with but haven't actually taken, I don't take any intra-race fuel. So some of the elite girls swear by things like Jelly Babies or Sour Patch Kids, and others take gels and things. But for me, I've been so scared that how it's going to play with my digestive system that I don't take anything. I don't even have any water during the race. But obviously one thing going into a Hyrox race is you're going to sweat a lot, so things like, and lose a lot of salt. So make sure that you are really fully hydrated with good electrolytes as well.
So for CrossFit, I basically made a product called WOD Fuel, which is cyclic dextrin carbohydrates with amino acids and electrolytes. So I created like an all-in-one intra-workout, and I'm yet really to push it into the Hyrox market. And mainly because I'm not doing Hyrox, I'm probably more focused on CrossFit. Now, a few Hyrox coaches have actually like bought it and taken it, and they say like it's perfect because it's very easily digestible, and it's just a good amount of carbohydrates for a run, with electrolytes in there as well. So I've got a separate product which is just electrolytes, but I'm gonna send it out to a few Hyrox athletes and just get some more feedback on it. It was originally made for CrossFit comps, because on a comp day, I don't know if you've done CrossFit before, and like a comp, it's really hard to eat because you don't know when to eat. You've got 4 workouts in a day, and naturally you have comp nerves, so you have that feeling of like, I don't really fancy eating a sandwich or a wrap or a burger or whatever. So WOD Fuel is just great because you can have 5 or 6 servings, so you're getting maybe 10 grams of carbs per serving, so 60 grams of carbs without really noticing. So that was really the purpose of that product. But yeah, I'm going to push it out to some Hyrox athletes.
Yeah, I'll definitely try it.
Yeah,
I've heard even when I dabbled a little bit in CrossFit, like wasn't necessarily any good, but did a few competitions. I remember people saying they used to have baby food.
Never heard that.
Yeah, because it was just really easy to eat. So they used to just rock up with different.
It kind of makes sense actually, because you don't want like a really stodgy meal and you feel it's sat there. Probably not going to try baby food, but if anything, actually, if I give people the choice of baby food or WOD Fuel, it'll probably be a selling point for my WOD Fuel. But yeah, I've got some electrolytes here actually. So the orange mango flavour is in a collab with the WOD Pod, so we did a little collab. So yeah, I'll give them to you if you can try and see how you get on. And yeah, let's talk about last weekend. So this podcast will probably come out in about 3 weeks, 4 weeks time, but for the purpose of this, it was the FIBO weekend in Germany, and you won the whole of the Hyrox overall.
I did, yeah. So again, it was the last chance qualifier that I touched on earlier, and there was 3 spots up for grabs, so you had to podium. So on the starting line, there was probably about 20 very good female athletes that actually some of them, I'd had the pleasure of racing against before. So kind of knew their race strategy, knew their strengths, etc. But yeah, ended up winning it overall. I think it was great. One of my close friends came third, and then actually a girl who was only in her second ever Hyrox race came second.
Wow. Your first Hyrox time was 109.
Yep.
You're now at 102. Are we going to be touching on the hour? Like, you can't be far off.
I would love to. And I think it's crazy. I was having this chat with someone the other day that these times, especially in Hyrox, get quicker and quicker. And sort of when we think we've reached the ceiling, someone goes and does an unbelievable race and breaks it. And going back to this idea of, I've only recently started believing in myself. If you'd have asked me 6 months ago whether I'd have been at the 102s, I'd have probably laughed at you.
Yeah.
But now I'm like, yeah, do you know what? Sub 60s in my sights. I'm willing to put the work in.
When's your next Hyrox?
So it will be, my next official is the World Championships in June. But I might go and do a couple of fun, in inverted commas, races. I might do doubles. My husband is yet to do a Hyrox, so he plays football. It's his sport of choice. So I think we might go and do one together potentially in the next few months.
He's going to hate it when you're saying, hurry up. Like, he's going to be cramping. You're going to just be like, yeah, doing him right over. Yeah.
I know. We've had this discussion, to be fair, and he's done a little bit of training. He always sends me like videos or messages when he's touched the sled. But I think he's got a long way to go before he's going to be a
and actually, people probably now see you have a few wins. They'll have high expectations. They'll see you on the doubles line thinking, well, we've lost. And you'll be coming in, 12th?
I'm going to have to put it out there. This is a fun race.
Yeah, this is a fun one. Yeah,
set
I think
expectations.
so. Yeah. Yeah, how long do you think Hyrox will be as popular as it is now? What do you think will happen?
Wow. I mean, look, it's a good question. I think the trajectory that it's on and it's been on is just grown exponentially. It is mad. I mean, if you take Birmingham, for example, or even Dublin, I think tickets sold out within 6 minutes. It is nearly as bad as Glastonbury. But I can't really, with the new places it's moving to, I can't really see the decline anytime soon. And with the divisions and things, like I said, you have the Open, the Pro, the Relay, and lots of brands are coming in now as it's growing to support it. So it's getting a lot more backing and exposure. For me, I just think it's going to very much continue to grow in the next few years.
If the stations could change, would you change them?
No, I don't think I would, because, so for example, one of my worst stations I dislike is the ski. And actually, because that's first, it's great, because as soon as I get that out of the way, I'm like, race is on, this is great. If, for example, you switched it and did the wall balls first as well, you imagine having all that upper body fatigue kind of going into the rest of the race. I mean, there's people that have spoken about, it could be good to bring the assault bike in, or max assault bike calories after the wall balls to finish or something. But I actually think the format really suits. And I think with the lactic kind of build-up of the sleds quite early, again, you've got that time to kind of flush it out before you get to the wall balls.
I feel like they could change all the stations for complete new ones. Like, if they look at CrossFit have so many different movements and exercises. You could create a completely new Hyrox, still call it Hyrox 2 or whatever, and just have the 8 stations?
Yeah, 8 stations.
New 8 stations that are completely new to Hyrox, and it would just create the whole wave of training again.
Yeah.
I feel like that would be an opportunity for them, because it's the same, you'd have the same sort of protocol, same layout.
100%.
And it gives all the athletes now new methods, new exercises to actually train for.
I think it's interesting as well, because there are some races, so I don't know if you're familiar with DecaFit. I think it's kind of coming over from, America, like Europe and stuff, there's more races, but that's a similar setup to Hyrox, but with, burpee rams and sort of sit-ups with the wall balls and things. So there are other hybrid, I guess, races that are coming into play. So yeah, potentially in maybe 5 years they might look at switching it up, but the whole idea is you can always compare your time against the same sort of race. That's what's kind of beneficial.
Good about it, yeah. So after you win the World Championships, do you think you'll maybe venture back to CrossFit at all?
Maybe. I mean, I think in my off-season training, in inverted commas, it'd be nice to move away from very specific Hyrox station stuff. And and do more of, I love a clean.
Yeah.
I love some of the gymnastic stuff. Not that I'm good at it, but yeah, definitely I'd like to touch on more on CrossFit.
Have you done any CrossFit competitions?
The only one I've done is I did Rainhill probably about 4 years ago, which was unbelievable. And I got put in the rocket, I think it's called rocket category,
the top one.
But I was very low down in the top one, only because I think a few of the qualification tests were things like burpees and things like
running and wobbles.
Exactly. So I did quite well. But yeah, that was a cool comp, and I know we spoke about it earlier, but I had Emily Steele, the Gladiator Dynamite, in my category, who was unbelievable.
Yeah, she's a very good athlete, yeah. Let's have a quick little plug for Built for Athletes. I know you're working with them. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on their bags?
Oh, they're just everything. They're such a staple on race day. Like, it's amazing how at the end of every race you obviously get your patch and you can sort of wear it with pride. And what's been really nice for me is actually keeping them and displaying them. The amount of conversations I've had with people, whether I've been commuting or on the way to a race, etc., where people have seen my bag and seen the patches, it's been lovely. You share that kind of passion, but also, as my husband would tell you, I don't pack light. I like to have options, lots of options. So the fact that they're so big and I can put so much in it means that, I don't have to think very hard about not packing everything.
And actually, when you think about it, a backpack that folds completely in half, like a suitcase, why have they not been a thing? Why aren't all backpacks like that? It's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a little plug there for Beth. I'm sure she'll be happy with that one. Are there any other brands that you'd like to work with?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, look, I've always been a massive fan of Puma. Going into their races, I love their race gear, love their trainers. So there'd be definitely a brand. And
Puma, they're a Hyrox sponsor, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the Puma Deviates. And again, this is a question that I'm often asked by a lot of people, like, what is the best footwear for Hyrox? Now, some people will say a Metcon, believe it or not, because I know, and this is exactly the face that I pull when I hear on Instagram,
it's like running in sandals.
Exactly. I know you can get away maybe with doing like 400 metres potentially in it, but remember that Hyrox is 50% a running race, so you really want something that's stable but light. So for me, I'd always go Puma Deviate, or I have run in the Saucony and Dolphin Pros too. So
when you said that, because I was just going to move on to some rapid fire questions, and the first question was, what's the best running trainer for Hyrox?
Okay,
so you kind of answered it. Go on then, we'll move on to these now. So what's the hardest station?
Burpee Broad jumps.
What's your go-to intra-workout? We said you didn't really take them.
No, don't really take them.
Do you think that could put 2 minutes off your time?
Oh, do you know what? Maybe. I'm going to try and I'll let you know. But potentially, I think, lots of athletes, I'm probably, out of the elites, I'm probably only one of the only ones that doesn't take anything intra. But it's just because, like I said,
and actually, it's one of those things where you've got to really experiment with it.
100%.
And it's the risk of, do I try something new during a Hyrox and potentially mess it up?
Exactly.
Whether it's a lot safer to not take anything and not have that worry.
Yeah.
It's just the more things that you add into the mix, the more complicated it can become.
Of course.
However, that could be the 2 minutes that you need.
That could be to get me the sub 60 right.
Yeah. What's the best Hyrox venue you've competed at?
I'd probably say Manchester. Yeah, I mean, I lived in Manchester for a while, but in terms of just the atmosphere, and it's my first World Championship, so I hold a lot of kind of nostalgic memories there, which is nice.
And what's your go-to takeaway after a Hyrox weekend?
Cool. What lesson that I'd share? You mean?
No, go-to takeaway as in takeaway meal.
Oh, takeaway. Sorry.
Or both.
I thought you were being deep.
No. I'm being stupid. Food.
Do you know what? McDonald's. I know that's mad. But I do love a McDonald's McChicken sandwich meal with a Diet Coke.
Each their own. I would definitely go for something a bit more out there, but...
I do love like a sourdough pizza.
Yeah.
That could come the day after.
And what's a random fact that most people won't know about you?
I can't believe I'm actually going to share this. Believe it or not, in lockdown, I went on a BBC game show. Called Unbeatable. And I won the game show.
Okay,
yeah,
at least you won it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And Jason Manford was hosting it, but actually not a lot of people know that, and I can't believe I've shared it in the podcast.
Everyone's going to be looking that up now, aren't they? I will be. And yeah, Zach Wilde was the last guest. I said to him, do you have a question? And he said, yeah, what's your favourite song to run to?
Oh, good one. Do you know what? Like Bryan Adams' Summer of '69. Great tune.
Well, Zach said, can you just continue asking all your guests and then I'll have a playlist for my next CrossFit comp. So when Summer of '69 plays at the next CrossFit comp, that's your fault.
Sorry, Zach.
And yeah, where can people find you? Social media? Just give you a little plug for your socials.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, so you can find me on Coached by Zara on Instagram. Like we said at the start, I'm an online coach. So if you are looking to do your first Hyrox, to beat your time, etc., or need support in the nutrition space, then feel free to reach out to me. Yeah,
if people wanted to kind of get like a basic training program without it being without too much involvement, if they just said, look, I want some pointers, like I might say, okay, could you give me just a generic sort of template to go off? Is that something you do, or do you kind of do much more detailed?
I mean, for me, the coach, like working with clients is all about understanding kind of like their life and getting to know their specific goals, etc. So everything is personalised and tailored. So whilst I could give a kind of a cookie-cutter template, I think the coaching that I really like to invest in is actually the more specific stuff to get people kind of from A to B in the right way. Yep,
very good. Well, I might be asking you for something because I might do a Hyrox at some point, but we'll see. But anyway, thanks for joining me. Hope you had a good time on the pod.
No worries, thanks for having me.
It was good, thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that episode, and a huge thank you for listening. Make sure you're following the pod on Instagram at the.wad.pod. The podcast is sponsored by Wad Powders. That's at Wad Powders on Instagram. Please show some support to the pod by either sharing this episode with a mate or buying some supplements from wadpowders.co.uk. See you guys next week.